Thank you, Mr Cummings. I'm pleased to welcome my honourable friend the Minister to his new responsibilities today, and I wish him well in his post. There is increasing recognition of the urgency of the current humanitarian situation in Sri Lanka, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to raise this issue at this crucial time. Concern at the situation is shared by members on all sides of the House, as I think today's attendance demonstrates. It is also deeply felt among the large number of Sri Lankans who have settled here in the UK. In London alone, there are more than 150,000 Sri Lankan Tamils, and since their arrival here, they have made and continue to make a distinguished contribution to our public life. Their concern at recent developments was perfectly clear last Monday when some 6,000 marched on Parliament. Their worries are also increasingly finding international voice. I note the recent comments by the European Commissioner for External Relations and the UN Secretary-General, which clearly acknowledge the seriousness of the present situation. I also welcome the recent statement issued by my right honourable friend, the Lord Malloch-Brown, and my honourable friend, the member for Dewsbury, which recognises the gravity of the current situation. But I think we need to say and do more. The current humanitarian crisis must be understood in the context of two interrelated developments. First, the escalation of fighting between the government forces and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, particularly since July. Second, the compulsory withdrawal of UN agencies and international non-governmental organisations, including all their staff, supplies and vehicles, from the Northern Vanni region, which was issued on September the 8th and came into force on September the 29th. Although the title of this debate is the humanitarian situation in Sri Lanka, my remarks today will focus on the Vanni region. This does not mean that suffering in Sri Lanka is confined to the Tamil-speaking areas. Like all members, I read with horror news of 2 suicide bombs in Sri Lanka last week, in which 30 innocent civilians lost their lives. I'm sure that all members present will join with me in condemning the slaughter of innocent civilians wherever and whenever it takes place. Nonetheless, I do think it is fair to say that the costs of war are concentrated in the Tamil-speaking areas of the north.
Will my honourable friend give way on that point?
Barry Gardner.
She will be aware that up until December of last year, about 70 lorries a day of humanitarian aid were going into the north and northeast. In September of this year, that fell to 0, that figure. Does this not precisely represent the scale of the humanitarian crisis that is now faced by those people, those displaced people, in the north and east of Sri Lanka?
My honourable friend makes a very valid point, and I will come to some remarks in relation to his remarks, and I hope the Minister will do the same. The conflict in Sri Lanka is as protracted as it is bloody. A civil war that has spanned more than 25 years, as many as 200,000 lives have been lost. There is, however, real reason to believe that the current spate of violence between government forces and the LTT in the north, particularly since July 2008, is worse than the conflict that preceded the 2002 ceasefire, and in particular that the government military campaign is more brutal and indiscriminate than previously. And with this escalation in violence has come deterioration in the humanitarian situation. More than 4,000 dead since 2006, tens of thousands injured, and more than 220 displaced. And I use the word displaced hesitatingly, because for me it does not really capture the seriousness of the situation. It somehow seems to imply a minor and perhaps temporary inconvenience, when actually what displaced really means is being forced to leave your home, all your worldly possessions, abandon your livelihood, and then finding yourself lacking adequate shelter, sanitation, clean drinking water, and food to feed your children. For some 10,000 families, displacement means living in the open air, living under the trees. Sorry, I thought someone... I will.
Lee Scott.
I thank the honourable member for giving way.
Does the honourable member agree with me, but included in the 250,000 innocent Tamil civilians are 40,000 children who are suffering at the moment, and the time has surely come for non-government organisations to be allowed back in for the sake of humanitarian issues?
John Ryan.
The honourable member makes a strong point, and I absolutely agree with him. At the same time as the humanitarian situation has worsened, those agencies and bodies that were previously giving people food, offering medical treatment, providing families with things like mosquito nets, bed linen, sleeping mats, they have indeed been forced to leave. And so as more and more people come to rely on international agencies and NGOs to meet their most basic needs, the compulsory withdrawal of UN and humanitarian agencies denies them this very lifeline. Indeed.
Keith Vance.
Can I congratulate her, first of all, on having this debate? But the situation is a catastrophe now. Only today, the Perararu Bridge was blown up by the Sri Lankan government, the one route whereby humanitarian aid was being taken into Vani. Isn't it time that the British government acts, either itself or in coordination with the European Union, to tell the Sri Lankan government they must stop the bombing of innocent Tamils?
John Ryan.
And I hope that is exactly the point that will be most forcefully heard by the Minister today from this debate. I just want to focus back on the issue of healthcare for a moment, particularly in relation to what my right honourable friend has just contributed. And although the conflict has not yet precipitated a large-scale health epidemic, with the start of the monsoon season, this remains a very real threat. And particularly if the violence is prolonged or deteriorates further. And given what my right honourable friend has said, we can expect that to be the case. Against the backdrop of endemic shortages in medical supplies and staff, with existing local facilities in the Bani region already overstretched and struggling to cope with the burden of war casualties, the role of international aid agencies in the provision of medical treatment becomes even more important. Forcing them to withdraw leaves the Tamils in the precarious position of increasing demand for medical treatment and falling capacity to meet this need. Only 2 weeks ago, Médecins Sans Frontières were forced to withdraw from Kilinochchi, despite the fact that there are only 17 qualified doctors working in the whole of the Vani region. As with medical services, so too with food supplies, which is, I know, an issue that the British Tamil Forum had taken up with my honourable friend, the member for Dewsbury, at the end of September in his previous capacity as Minister for International Development. Forced to leave their homes and jobs, thousands are now unable to earn a living, coupled with rising food prices, which have in fact risen by 50% this year alone, and a shortfall in the domestic rice supply, which is the staple food of islanders. The Tamils now find themselves facing a severe food shortage and the prospect of malnutrition and, I'm afraid, even starvation. They face this prospect without even the assistance of international aid agencies on whom they could previously rely for food. If the current situation in the Bani is almost unremittingly bleak, so too are its future prospects. Figures I have obtained from Save the Children indicate that more than 30,000 school children from 154 schools have been displaced,